Opening the center, this immediately stakes a claim and prepares development. Establishing a central pawn presence mirrors white's intention, contesting key central squares and preparing for potential pawn breaks. Challenging the center's integrity, this move immediately creates dynamic pawn conflicts and opens avenues for piece development. Solidifying the center, e6 opens lines for the bishop and prepares for knight development, fostering a robust pawn structure. Developing the knight to its natural outpost here supports central control and prepares for kingside castling. Developing this knight naturally prepares for castling while contesting central space. Developing another knight solidifies central influence and prepares for kingside castling, a common ambition in this queen's gambit declined setup. Developing the knight to d7 bolsters the central pawn chain and prepares for c6 or e5, a flexible yet solid defensive choice. Developing the bishop to this active square prepares for castling and exerts pressure on black's central pawn structure, creating a dynamic imbalance. Abandoning the central pawn allows white increased space and a more active bishop. Reclaiming the central pawn immediately opens up lines for piece activity. Unleashing a knight to its central stronghold, this bold maneuver promises dynamic counterplay and disrupts white's intended central grip. Recapturing the pawn tidies up the center and prepares for a queenside pawn push, aiming for central control. Initiating a knight exchange to simplify the center, potentially opening diagonals for bishops. Recapturing opens the e-file and secures the central pawn majority, setting up a potential kingside attack. Developing the bishop to d6 now, preparing to challenge the light square control white enjoys. Solidifying the kingside pawn structure, this creates a safe haven for the king and prepares for potential queenside activity. Developing the knight to its natural outpost solidifies piece harmony and prepares to contest the central files. Securing the king is paramount, enabling further piece development and preparation for middle game plans. Castling secures the monarch, preparing the rooks for central action and completing kingside development. Unlocking the queen to potentially support a central advance or join the queenside pressure. Preparing to contest the queen's bishop's diagonal and perhaps initiate queenside expansion. Opening the d-file creates immediate pressure, targeting black's queenside pawn structure and potentially developing a battery on the open diagonal. Expanding the queenside pawn structure, b6 aims to create a safer haven for the bishop on c8 and challenge white's central control. Activating the rook on the c-file establishes crucial central influence and pressures black's queenside structure. Bringing the bishop to this diagonal prepares a potential queenside expansion and supports the d5 pawn, creating a solid defensive structure. Elevating the bishop to a commanding diagonal prepares for central pawn advances and pressures black's kingside. Aimed at a bolder pawn push, this places the queen more actively, preparing to support a queenside expansion or potentially regroup. A bold knight sacrifice to seize central space and pressure black's weakened queenside. Connecting the rooks on the d-file establishes crucial defensive and offensive coordination, preparing to contest the open file. A bold decision to simplify, potentially opening lines for white's rooks and pressuring black's exposed king. Reclaiming the center with the queen offers crucial counterplay, activating a dormant piece and setting up potential tactical opportunities. Strategically redeploying the bishop to target squares around black's somewhat exposed king. Trading bishops simplifies the position, potentially leading to an endgame where black's pieces can coordinate effectively against white's slightly more advanced pawns. Regaining the pawn initiates a cleaner position, simplifying toward a promising endgame advantage. Black aggressively challenges white's pawn structure, aiming to disrupt the center and open lines for piece activity. Injecting a knight into the center, this move aims to disrupt black's pawn structure and seize central space. Capturing that pawn opens a vital diagonal for your queen and challenges central control. Asserting central control with the rook now creates significant pressure on black's queenside pawn structure. A courageous attempt to untangle the position, but it grants white control of the open central files, unleashing a decisive rook on the 7th rank, threatening immediate disruption to black's entire position. Seeking counterplay, black challenges the rook's aggressive placement and opens lines for their queen. Unleashing a powerful queen, white disrupts black's queenside structure and pressures the rook. Seeking safer skies, black repositions the rook, unblocking the queen's path and preparing for potential counterplay on the now open queenside. Unlocking the d-file, white pressures the queenside and eyes potential breakthroughs as black solidifies their structure. This defensive maneuver unfortunately concedes vital central squares, potentially loosening black's pawn structure and opening lines for white's rooks. Aggressively seizing queenside space, this pawn thrust gambles on opening lines towards black's castled king.